What type of class did you go to that they were all natural?
It was actually recommended by my OB's office. They're like, oh, this is the one that's just like on the paperwork to go. I later on, after that, told my OB about the class when I had my next baby. I was like, that class, this is the stuff they did at the end of it. Spoiler alert, none of that stuff worked. My baby was born with a C-section for him. Um, but I told her, when I was at that birth class, the one that's recommended by the literature that this doctor's office sends home with pregnant people, the person who taught that class told me, because the day that I found out for sure I was having a C-section, I was kind of a mess. I was like weepy during the class and stuff. And so, we had talked about why with the teacher. And she said, well, you should really push with your OB to not have the C-section pre-labor. You should wait until you go into labor, because it's so good for the baby to labor for a while, even if the baby's breeching, you have to have a C-section, which, no. But this person who has no medical qualifications at all is telling me I should argue with my OB, who, has delivered thousands of babies. I told my OB this later on, my next baby, this is what this class told me. And she was like horrified by that. So I don't know if they've changed anything about what they recommend or anything, but like, it was interesting to me that this class was like that. They didn't like know that there's some kind of disconnect going on there. I delivered at like a big teaching hospital. So it was very much like, here's what the research is. Here's the research that's happening right now, this minute. Here's what the newest, like I've had experiences where the resident who, pediatrician who was looking at my son was like, they just changed the recommendation on this today. I'm going to go print off that thing so I can send you home with like the newest recommendation, which is awesome.
That's cool.
Yeah, I love that. It's great. It's like residents are so on top of things. They know exactly what's happening right now.
I was wondering what kind of class it was, because I have noticed that about parenting classes is that, or like when you're, especially like new parents, they go to do different kinds of classes and childbirth classes, or not so much of like what you do afterwards for the baby, like, feeding baby, changing diapers, not so much those ones, but the ones that have to do with like pregnancy, birth. Those seem to be the ones that are all like super woo natural, like, I mean, just like extremely, and they're normally ran by a doula or somebody, you know what I mean? Somebody that has to do with that attends births in one way or another. And that's what I noticed too, is a lot of the ones, even at the hospitals, they would be at the hospital recommended, like you can see their roster, like on the walls of the hospital in their little back rooms, their little teaching rooms. And you still get these like woo stuff, and they give dangerous advice. They'll tell people like, you don't need that C-section and stuff like that. And it's like, you're not a doctor. You have no medical experience at all. So I was wondering what type of class it is, because I do know from my two boys, like I did hypnobirthing, I've done, so some of the stuff, it's like, I mean, that right there, it's like, it's hypnobirthing, you know what you're kind of going to get into. If I was having a home birth, so it was like, that was just kind of the way. But but I noticed it even with my hospital baby, is that we did a parenting after, and the lady that was signing us up for the class was a doula. And she was like, she took us around on the tour for the hospital. And when they were showing the rooms, I asked for like, where's the operating room? And she was like horrified that I would ask where it is. I was like, well, what distance is it? Because we were in the hall of like, where is it? Like, is it over here? Like, where is it? Like, and she was like, well, it's over that way, but we normally don't show where that area is. Like, and I was like, well, I'm having a C-section, so I'm just wondering where I have to go, because I'm like, this is nice for afterwards, but I'm just wondering, like, they're gonna have me check me in, and where do I go? And she was like, why are you having a C-section? And I was like, well, because I want a C-section. And she was like horrified that I would elect a C-section. She was like, well, she was trying to tell me how great vaginal births were and like all this stuff. And I was like, you know what? That is great for somebody to make that decision for themselves, but mine is a C-section. And she just was like, and she tried to like even push the home birth agenda on me too, after I was still like, I was like, I don't want to, I'm good. I'll have a C-section. And then that was like, the other side comes out where I was nice, where I was like, you know what? My first son was a home birth and he's dead. So this time I'm going to choose a C-section with a doctor that actually knows what they're doing. And the look on her face, and then she said, I'm training to be a CPM. And
Oh,
I was like, and she works in the hospital. And I was like, you know what? CPM is what killed my son. You might want to do some more research. If you really want to deliver babies, why don't you do it in the hospital? There's nurses and there's nurse midwives. That's where you need to be. And boy, oh boy, it like changed her life. We left, and I remember Michael was like, I think she's actually going to go like sign up and go do some nursing classes, because she was like, it like blew her mind. She was young. She was very young, probably attended a friend or family member's birth. And then, you know what I mean? It becomes that like, I hate to say it's like an addiction, but that's kind of how it is. You become a part of it. It's the community. It's so great. And then it just keeps
emotional.
going. Yeah, yeah, they do. And so yeah, so I mean, I've noticed that, and I was like, and I was signing up with her to do. It wasn't her that was teaching, with someone else, which she did tell us that, and we were like, thank God, we weren't going to do the class if it was her, but it was another lady, and she was really really nice, and all the people that go to the class are hospital parents, so it's like it's a different experience, you know, like they're prepared for us, I guess. But yeah, I've noticed the same thing where I'm like, God dang, these freaking birth attendants trying to make money at baby classes and birth classes and
Classes too, because like I don't know mine. I know that they definitely made like a big deal about so many people end up having C-sections. Lots and lots of babies are born by C-sections. Way too many babies are born by C-sections. There's tons of C-sections. We're not going to tell you anything about C-sections. Like, so you're telling me that statistically, like 3 people in this room might have one, but you don't want us to be prepared for that possibility in any way. The only things you're going to tell us about are scary things about them and how to avoid them.
yeah,
Like, that's
not to prepare. Yeah, not to prepare you for the expectations of it could happen. And it's better to be prepared, because I've noticed the biggest grievance of people trying for birth is they end up with a C-section. Yes, an emergency C-section is traumatizing and it is scary, especially after if you've been pushing for a while or whatever was going on, you did go through labor. But the big thing is they have to come to terms with they're not having a vaginal birth, which is pushed on all of us. Vaginal birth, must have it out of your vagina. And so when you end up having a C-section, it's like something's wrong with you. And I think everybody that has to go through this thing of like, I did something wrong. Somehow something went wrong. And it's not about that. It's not like that. And that's what I hate that about the whole C-section thing. Cause I'm like, C-sections should be like kind of more rejoiced, and we should be happy that we even have them, because babies are alive, mothers are alive from them. Like, we have them for a reason. It's not, I mean, if vaginal birth was just the way, we wouldn't have medical, we wouldn't have birth attendants, midwives or doctors, we wouldn't have anybody, we'd just be popping out babies. So I just don't understand why they don't like that we have all these tools that have come and been tested and try like all these different things, and they do work, and people are alive from them. So it drives me a little crazy, you know?
Part of what I think happens is that people, especially people who worked so hard and put so much effort into their birth, feel like having a C-section is somehow cheating.
Yeah.
I mean, it like, no, you have to do all this work. I did all of this work and it was totally worth it. And when people who don't do all that work, they're like, but wait a second, that's not fair.
I actually think spinning babies is very much related to that, because I think one of the things about it that I think is kind of unhappy or dangerous or just a negative aspect of it is that, aside from the things we kind of said already, right? Like, okay, it's uncomfortable. It's not proven. It's maybe dangerous in some cases because you have these balance issues and you're doing things that maybe your body's not really in the right shape to be doing at the time. Something about it that I think is very bad is that it very, very much plays into this idea that if you do everything right, things will go right. And that it is your responsibility to be ready for it. It is your responsibility to make your body do these things. And if your body doesn't do these things, it's probably because you didn't do it right, right? There's two sides of that, right? And it's just not true. Sometimes bodies just don't do what we want them to do. Sometimes they just don't, you know? I mean, you can be Simone Biles at the Olympics and say, my body's not doing what it's supposed to do. And her body probably, she's got more control of it than any of the rest of us do. But sometimes it just isn't there. Sometimes there just isn't anything to do. And I think that especially for women, there's this like busy work, right, that we have to do. We have to be working on it at all times, because if it doesn't go right and you go back and your birth didn't go the way you wanted and you needed a C-section even though you didn't want one, then, oh, well, it's because you didn't do enough. And so I think that a lot of us kind of sense that as well and think, well, I better try everything, because if it doesn't go well, then I don't want anyone to say, or for me to feel like it was because I did it wrong.
Yeah, I agree. There's a level of like judgment, even being in like the natural community. When I was in the natural community, there's a lot of, I don't want to say that I guess judgment is the other word that the only word I can think of for this, but it's true. If anybody goes to the hospital for pain relief, pain relief is what they normally call it, but that doesn't mean that that's necessarily why someone went to the hospital, but they'll throw it in that angle, is that it was for pain relief. Like, she couldn't handle it. She's not, there's this thing like, you're not woman enough, you're not strong enough. They have like this thing where they kind of like, you have to do A to Z to get to here, and if you missed out on a couple in there, then you're not going to get to here. You're going to get to here, and you're going to be just like these people that are just terrible people, which exactly like you guys are saying, it's like that cheated the system, because it, you know, you end up with a C-section. Like, a C-section is so much easier than a vaginal birth. So, you know, well, you took the easy way out, which I've actually heard that before. Is that C-section is the easy way out. And now looking back from my experience of, you know, my two boys, I'm like, you know what, I'll take the easy way out any day, just because of my own previous experience. And I'm like, and I'm sorry, there's no point of having all that pressure, because I do remember, as much as I was in this community of women and this empowerment, there was a lot of like, there was a heavy weight that was on me. And so when we got to 40 weeks, it got even heavier. And every day, every moment, it would get heavier, because I was like, and my midwife had me thinking like, something's wrong with you. Something's telling you, your instincts for you not to have your baby at home. This should be the safest place for you. Why are you not having your baby? You know, mothers, like mother dogs, will go pick their certain special spot that's safe to them, and you've picked your home, this is your safe place. So there was a lot of like shaming that happened, and I can look back and easily say like, I was part of that they shamed me, because it was like, oh, you're not having your baby, your contractions are not staying steady, it means something's wrong, something's going on with you mentally that is making you not have your baby. And that's stuff that I've never been able to forget, because, you know, it's there, it's in there, of this like, of this weird mom shaming thing that they do, of like, if you don't do things exactly the way that you're supposed to be doing things, the way that they tell you to, they can easily throw you under the bus when things go sideways. Easily, you know, it's mom's
the
fault.
thing where it's kind of like, say you subscribe to Spinning Babies and you faithfully did all of your exercises and you were eating right and drinking all your water and all that good stuff, and your baby's still not coming, 40 weeks, time ticking, or maybe labor starts, but it won't establish. What they say, and I've seen this in multiple stories, is, Danielle, you have an emotional block. You are resisting this. You need to work on this. And then the midwife frequently takes credit for helping you through this emotional block. And it's like, okay, it's back on you again. It's not, your body isn't doing by itself. If we gave it some help, maybe things would kick off the way they're supposed to. No, it's an emotional block. It's like, oh, wow, can't have Pitocin. We'll just blame the pregnant person.
Right.
for not going into labor.
If your whole mindset is based on the idea that you have absolute control over all of these processes, then it's so much easier to say that, oh, subconsciously you're choosing to have this happen than it is to change your entire mindset and just accept sometimes things are just weird. Sometimes they're random. Sometimes things go wrong. It just happens. That's scary. Like, that's terrifying to just accept sometimes things just happen. We have no control over it. I'm afraid of that. Who isn't afraid of that? But it doesn't change the fact that it's true.
Yeah. No, it's true. And they do. It is all about, like, I don't want to say the control factor, but even Marissa has said it many times when we talk about like home birth and we'll talk about all these different things. There's a level of like control. You want like a level of control with your birth plan of like people coming in and their birth plan is like this big. It's like this giant, but it's like, it doesn't need to be that big. It doesn't need to be that long, but they're just this huge birth plan of like what they really want. And this is what I need. And, but that's, you know, but it doesn't go into the stuff that's kind of, and I hate to say the important stuff. There's not the things that are being talked, like shared about with like the baby, what's going on with baby, what's going on with you. Like if stuff starts going off here with you, stuff's going to start going on with them. Like it just, there's just this spiral effect that I feel like we're not talking about, but like the whole like happy thoughts thing. Like if you just magically have positive, happy vibes, like your whole pregnancy, you're magically going to have this wonderful birth experience. And I can tell you it's the biggest load of crap because I was the happiest pregnant person with my son. I was I was living on this like happy high life of like, I can't even explain it. I just, every day I was so grateful. I was so happy. I walked like crazy. I drank water like crazy. I ate well. I did yoga every day, even while pregnant. Like, I mean, I just was like on it. I was so like believing in this mindset of like this positive, happy life. And I just kind of just did my thing. And I got told all the time from people, you're the coolest pregnant lady I've ever met, or I got told that at the grocery store. Like literally people were like, you're just so cool. Like you wouldn't even know that you were pregnant because I was just so happy all the time. And when things went a whole nother way, like, that was what happened was I questioned somewhere in there. I didn't do enough yoga. I didn't eat enough. I didn't eat well enough. I didn't drink enough water. Like I really questioned what did I do wrong? And it wasn't until I sat down with a doctor, an actual doctor, that was like, that has nothing to do with, that's great. It's great that you do all that, but things just happen. And it was like, and what happened to you was completely preventable, avoidable in every way. And so it's just kind of one of those, like, I can't stand that. I hate that whole, like, just live on this, whatever. But it's true, when to be in that, if we just think happy thoughts, it will all just kind of work out.